Good morning, Bob. Welcome to the show, and thanks for being here with me.
Thanks, Paul. Hope I can enlighten everybody with some information here.
I have no doubt that you will. I have no doubt. So let's start by getting to know you a bit better. For those that don't know Bob Mosey and Moseys, tell us about your company and yourself.
Ooh, I'll try not to drag on too long. Bob Mosey, President CEO of Mosey's Production Machinist. I am actually second generation. My mom and dad started the business in 1975, and three of the five kids came in pretty early on. So while I
Mm-hmm.
was here nearly from the beginning, I still consider myself second gen. My older sister and my younger brother were involved in the business for many years. We grew the business from basically a literally mom and pop shop
Mm-hmm.
with mom deburring parts and stuff
Mm-hmm.
like that
Love that.
to the kids coming in and starting to help out and grow the business. Um, let's see, where do I want to go with that? My sister passed away in 2010. My dad passed away in 2000. My little brother left the company probably 20 years ago. My
Mm-hmm.
sister and I had bought him out. So I guess it's been over that. And it suddenly turned out to just be me. So
Mm-hmm.
my wife and I now own the business, and our oldest son Nick is in the business. Been here about 8 years now, and he is
Okay.
CFO. So he
Uh-huh.
he handles all the money side of it, and we have John Zamuda and Christy Zamuda, who are our COO and HRCO that run the business now.
Okay.
And
Is there a
that's
family
kind of where.
relation to those two, or just
No, well, they are they are related by marriage, which is
okay?
interesting because we had our HR person marry the shop guy.
Of course.
They've actually handled it really well. And we haven't had any issues with that. I was a little apprehensive at first when I first kind of found
Sure.
out they were
Sure.
dating, but they've done a superior job with it and have really grown with the company.
That's incredible. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, I've met John many times. He's an exceptional guy for sure.
Yes, absolutely.
So, how did your dad start the business in the first place? Was he a machinist prior? Did he
Yeah.
work in a company that did that?
So my dad has an interesting history. We came from Indiana originally. He moved us out here in
Okay.
1962, but before that, he had had a couple businesses. His brothers all were kind of hands-on machinist type guys. His older brother had started a machine shop, so when they all got out of the service, they all went to work with him. I actually have a little
Mm.
business card, Mosey's Manufacturing, and the four service emblems in the corners of the business card showing the four
Oh
different
wow,
branches that they came out. It was pretty cool.
that is cool.
So dad, as brothers are, they come and go. Not really
Hmm.
interested in working with brothers once in a while. So dad would go off and do his own thing. He'd started a hobby shop, which he was such a nice guy. He gave everything away and went out of business. And then he did a bicycle shop, and then he did a motorcycle shop. Uh,
Oh
and in
wow, a
between, he would
serial
go back to
entrepreneur.
work and machine. Yeah, yeah, kind of, yeah. And obviously learned a lot through all those things. And then in 1962, he moved us out to California. Uh, Moved in with our aunt and uncle for 2 months. Within 2 days, he had a job as a machinist at an aerospace company, which wasn't a
Hmm.
big surprise. If you're a machinist, you can get a job anywhere.
Yes.
And he started working in that shop, that company, went to work for a smaller job shop for about 12 years. Kept watching the boss come in late, leave early, and drive a new car every year. And he goes, I kind of want that. So
Hmm.
he talked mom into refinancing the house and buying the first little Morsiki engine lathe and a little multi-tenant building, one unit, and
Uh huh.
started working evenings, and then got enough work to where he could quit his day job. And
Right.
and
And that
my
was
little
just a
brother would
manual. That was just a manual lathe or a CNC.
manual lathe. No, 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 no.
Manual.
This is before
Okay,
CNC, really. So um,
that's what I figured.
definitely manual. We still have the second one, the second lathe we ever
Oh,
bought.
do you really?
We don't have the first one. We have the first two Bridgeports that he ever bought.
Okay.
Yeah, the first one actually was used from his previous employer. So
Okay.
that thing's over 50 years old now. I don't know. It's still out
Right.
there running. So
That's amazing. Yeah. Treat them well, and they can last a long, long time.
they can, yeah. But that's
Very
how
cool.
Mosey's got started.
And then how did you? So did you just learn on the job working in the shop from a young age?
Growing up from a very young age, Dad had a different way of keeping me out of trouble. A lot of people put their kids in Boy Scouts and sports and that kind of stuff. We were working in the garage. We were building things, push
Mhm.
carts, bicycles, mini bikes, model airplanes. And then, of course, getting into 15, 16-year-old, I want a car. So mow
Yeah.
lawns, buy the old car, learn how to do the old car business. So I've always worked with my hands, love working with my hands. In high school, I'm not the best student in the world, but I majored in
Hmm.
metal shop. So I hung out
Okay.
in metal shop. I didn't hang out in auto shop because we were doing that at home. So I worked in the metal shop as much as I could and learned all about welding and machining and all that there. But always had this dream of starting my own auto shop. That's I still do it as a hobby, but not as a business. And I was about ready to start my own shop when Dad started the business. He asked me to come in on a special project, and I stayed on for about 6 months. Left for 6 months, come back, been here ever since. I love the part of it, and that because I was a mechanic, I would work on the machines. He would buy older equipment, I'd rebuild it. So I've done everything here from sweep the floors, clean the toilets, clean the sumps out of machines, rebuild old stuff, run
Hmm.
parts. We got our first CNC. I was the first one to learn how to program on a yellow pad, and then punch the
Okay.
program into the teletype. And if there's any oldsters on the show, they'll know what I'm talking about.
Oh, I'm sure there are. Yes.
And put the
Very
tape in the
cool.
machine. So yeah, it's been a long progression of things. It's been fun.
Wow,
So that's
that's
how
a
I got
great.
into it. It just kind of got invited in early on.
And I can just tell why by the way you talk about it that you've just absolutely loved it.
You know, like working with my dad. We have a pretty tight family, still do.
Hmm.
Four of the kids are still alive, and
Yeah,
we still all get along and still meet up every so many months.
that's
And,
fantastic.
it's a good thing.
Wonderful. Yeah, it's a great start. So, as the company grew over the years, what would you say were some of the things that you did really well that allowed the company to grow and thrive like it has?
Actually, I give most of that credit to my dad. Uh,
Hmm.
he allowed us to step up when we felt like we could step up.
Hmm.
So I think I brought a lot of, I'll say, versatility, jack of all trades, master of none type
Okay.
experience to the shop. So I could do everything in the shop that was mechanical. And it
Hmm.
wasn't until we were starting to do production work that he would make promises that we couldn't keep.
Mm.
Only because the customer would pressure him into a due date or something, and we go, we can't do that. We have these other jobs, and so we
Right.
finally got to the point where he would allow me to talk to the customer
Okay.
and make my own commitments.
Sure.
Right. So if I commit to it, then we got buy-in and everything goes well. So I mean, I think that was his strong point, was being able to delegate and allow us to make mistakes and keep moving forward and growing.
Hmm.
And I've tried to do the same thing going forward with all of our
Hmm.
people. So you asked me what I brought to it. I think it just the willingness to take on those kind of responsibilities without really giving them a lot of thought. I just did it. Um,
Right.
I started talking to customers. Next thing you know, I'm wearing nicer shirts, not the t-shirt out in the shop guy anymore.
Uh-huh.
And I'm going out and visiting the customers, and that's what started growing the business. So I kind of ended up in kind of business development, even though I've
Hmm.
never really called myself a salesperson.
Sure. Yeah, that was the path that I personally kind of fell into in our shop was that role. After at the
Mm-hmm.
beginning, being the programmer and parts runner and floor sweeper and sump cleaner and all those things you said.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I fell into that sort of business development role, which is really important in a shop, right? A lot of
You
shop
think?
owners,
Yeah.
I don't think. Oh, yeah, of course you can't grow without it. So, how did you try to find new customers? Did you just go knock on doors, or I imagine it's changed over the years as the
I
internet's come
started.
into
I
play and
started
all
out
that.
trying. Yeah, I started out trying to follow in Dad's footsteps, which probably weren't the best footsteps for a salesperson. He would wait till we run out of work, and then he'd jump in the truck and drive around and find some work, and come back with more work. And then we'd run out of that box of parts and go on to the next one. So I tried to be a little more proactive than that, and
Hmm.
we It was fairly easy in the early years because we had some oil and gas customers. Southern California was pretty heavy in oil
Yeah.
at that time. So we had five or six customers that were really good customers, but all oil related. So it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't until the oil embargo in the early 80s that took us to our knees, and we
Mm.
realized that we can't be concentrated in one industry. So as we came back out of that, somehow, I don't know how we survived that, but we did. And we just started going to anybody we could talk to. So we were machining fiberglass. It
Mm.
was awful, but it
Yeah.
got us a new customer. And those people start leaving, and that's the other thing that happened is a lot of the people engineers and stuff that we worked with at our oil customers, of course, left, went other places, brought us along with them.
Of
So
course.
basically, references and referrals is how we
Mm-hmm.
grew the business and started getting diversified.
Right.
I don't know how purposely it was done, but it was just a matter of in the old days sitting down with the yellow pages and making cold calls when
Mm-hmm.
we didn't have referrals. But I would say most of our business and new customers came from referrals from people we'd been working with over the years
Yeah.
before.
Well, that only works when you treat your customers well, and they want to bring you along when they change companies, right? You build
We've
that
had
deep
some really
relationship.
long time customers. I could probably name NOV. I mean, a lot of people probably know who National Oilwell Varco is. They were one of Dad's very first customers, and they're still a customer today. And that's
That's
been
amazing.
47 years ago.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
Wow, what a testament to long-term relationships based on probably trust and delivering for your customers over and over and over for years.
I think honesty probably played a big part in that. It's one of our
Mm-hmm.
main values that we have in the company, and I hang my hat on that. It's brutally honest. We let the
Yeah,
customer know when something ain't going to happen. We know when we can or can't do something, and uh, it's
yeah.
easier to live that way and sleep at night. Being
Oh,
honest, and I think
absolutely,
our
it is.
customers appreciate that, and they keep coming back because we are.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, every buyer out there, every company knows that that no shop is perfect, but the ones that are super honest and upfront about how things are going, the good, the bad, and don't try to hide that fact and just be real.
That's
Ultimately,
it.
that wins out in the long run, I think.
Absolutely.
So you mentioned the oil embargo and it bringing it to your knees. Can you describe a little bit of that whole time and what happened? And
So as we were growing, I said we were in a multi-tenant building. So we started in Unit B, then we got A and C and D, and then behind L and M, and then across the alley into bigger 5,000 square foot buildings. But we were running back and forth across the alleys. About 25 people at
mm-hmm,
that time, mostly manual machines. We were running some what we called automation in the day. It was Warner Swayze automatic checkers. Again, I don't know how many people on the call will know what those are, but they
mm-hmm,
were basically automatic machines that were all cam and micro switch type stuff, no computers. So we were running production.
mm-hmm.
Uh, where were we going, Paul? I got lost there.
That's okay. The oil embargo and the
Oh yeah,
growth
okay.
and the
So we had about 25 employees, and when that happened, it was overnight. We went
mm,
from 25 people to five,
oh
which
wow,
were mostly family. Uh, we went from our receivables being people were paying, taking 10-day payments and discounts, and we were getting paid right away. So
mm-hmm,
cash flow wasn't a problem. That
mm-hmm.
from overnight went to 120 days. So cash dried up.
Wow,
Um, all the orders that we had in place were canceled.
mm-hmm.
Deliveries of parts we had were moved out or just canceled altogether. No new orders were coming in. Um, it got so bad. I think my dad and my sister, I can't remember if it was then or another downturn that we had later on. Um, I think it was later on, but we ended up somehow or another getting into wind generator business back when there were wind generator
Okay,
people, right? There were incentives for having the wind generators,
sure,
and you had those up by the end of the year. So to get the tax breaks, right, for the investors.
right,
Um, on our second year, the broker that was selling all the wind generators, decided to leave the country with all the deposits. At the end of the year, all the wind generators were up and running. The company we were making them for obviously didn't get paid. All the investors
Hmm.
bailed. They went BK. And again, we were taken to our knees again. And that's when I think mom and dad, or my sister and my dad, went to a bankruptcy attorney, and he said, "You're too far gone. I can't even help you."
Can't even
And
help you
dad
with
just,
bankruptcy.
yeah, right. And
Wow.
dad just kind of shrugged his shoulders, and we went back home and just kept working. Again, I don't know how. I know dad and mom ate beans and weenies for a lot of years,
Hmm.
going through those tough times, and we just put our head down and just kept working.
Right.
And here we are today we're back up to 30 some people, doing probably 3 times the work we were doing with 25 back then.
Sure.
So,
Wow. That's
so it
remarkable.
was, over the 47 years, Paul, we've had some big ups and downs, which most businesses out there go through, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's true. Although I'll still contest that machine shops go through the biggest, hardest swings. It's the hardest business in the world to run. That keeps being reinforced to me time and time again. But it's so essential and it's rewarding, that people
Yeah,
keep
we're
getting up.
absolutely necessary, Paul.
Oh
There's no
yes,
question about that.
we couldn't be sitting here recording without machine parts or machines at the core of everything that we're touching or working with.
A
Wow.
real quick story on that, if you don't
Yeah.
mind.
Yes, of course.
So last Friday was manufacturing day,
Yes.
right? So a lot of manufacturing companies open their doors to bring in young people. That's actually one of our values is stewardship, giving back to the industry to help grow it and keep it here, because it's really important. Without manufacturing, we have nothing. So I always try to get the youngins out in the shop to do the tours. So we got high
Hmm.
school kids coming in and people maybe in their early to mid 20s giving the tours, so they can totally relate to these people,
Yeah.
better than me.
Sure.
So I went out today and was thanking the 2 guys that were helping me do tours on Friday, and Lewis was just kind of going, I really got it. He says, on the way home, I was thinking that this is really important. We have to get these young people to understand and know about manufacturing, because they're all thinking about all this cool stuff going to space. Who's going to build that? And I said, Lewis, you got it. That's exactly why we do this. So
Hmm.
they get it. When you talk about it, the young ones get it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a long way to go, but there seemed to be a lot of positive movement in getting younger folks interested earlier on. I think middle school was
Agree.
probably really the time to get them starting to get hooked on
Couldn't
it.
couldn't agree more. Even when I was growing up, I had wood shop and metal shop in junior high school.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the teacher didn't have many fingers left, but
Oh,
they were,
jeez.
they were there. It was a
Well,
different time.
changing that
Yeah.
perception that it's dangerous is
Well,
also an
that's
important
that
part of.
again. That's a long time ago, Paul, and that's the way. That's the perception that people have of manufacturing, and it's not like
Right.
that today. I still have all 10 fingers,
Yes.
and all our
Yes.
people still have all 10 fingers.
Yeah.
It's different today than it was then.
Yeah.
A
For
lot
sure.
different.
You mentioned core values a couple of times.
Yeah,
You must have an established set of core values. Can you share that?
sure. So I can't remember how many years ago it was. Probably 10 years ago. We were going through some strategic planning, and the facilitator asked me what my values were, and I just kind of shrugged my shoulders. I go, I don't know, just be a good business guy. He goes, no, you got to have a written values. Fine. So I went in my office and closed the door and sat in here for about an hour, and I wrote down my values. It's pretty simple because it's just how I am and what I
Hmm.
believe in. Top of the list was honesty,
Hmm.
even if it's not what they want to hear.
Of course.
So it's not about just being honest, but it's about feeling okay about being honest. Uh,
Hmm.
Alerting the customer if some part's going to be late if there's a problem with the part. Goes the other direction for our employees, that they're honest and don't fear being honest with
Hmm.
us and say, I've made a bad part. And instead of putting it in the box with the good ones, actually bring it up, talk about it, figure out what we did wrong in the process and fix it so it doesn't happen again.
Hmm.
Same thing with our suppliers. So it's the full food chain about being honest.
Great.
And then, of course, integrity. I don't know that I'd want a supplier that didn't have integrity, but being able to continuously do what we say we're going to do for us,
Mhm.
that's our integrity. Customer focus for us. Some of our customers get kind of irritated because I ask so many questions, but I really want to understand their problems, what the problems they're trying to solve. How are we going to be able to help them? And the more information I get from them on what their issues are, the better I can help them with stuff. So it's all about being focused on the customer. That's externally. Of course, we have the same thing internally with whoever
Mhm.
we're handing parts to internally. So a lot of times I'm the supplier and the guys out
Right.
in the shop are the customers. So it goes all the way around. Relationship, caring. Again, it's really about it's kind of those family values that
Mhm.
I talked about earlier. I said when it was all that was left was family.
Yeah.
We've tried to keep that family atmosphere here in the company and still continue to do that. We've done interviews and surveys and stuff with our employees, and the number one response to why do you work here, and it's because it feels like family. I've had them say I've never worked anywhere where the owner knew my name.
Hmm.
And I walk around at least once a day, sometimes multiple
Mhm.
times a day, just to say hello to people. I don't direct anybody anymore because I get in
Right.
trouble if I do that. We have people that do that, right? I just go out and say hi and
Right.
talk to them about what they're doing and listen to what they're doing, make them feel important because they are.
Mhm.
And then I do the same thing all the way through to the customers as well. It's not
Mhm.
just about the work and the print and the part; it's about people. So that's really important to us. And then the last value I wrote down was stewardship, which I talked a little bit about
Mhm.
already.
Yeah.
Giving, sharing our God-given talents with the industry that gave us so much. I mean,
Mhm.
really, when we look back at the quality of our lives since Dad started the business, it's really we've had a great life. We're not super rich. We don't have mansions. We don't have big yachts, that kind of stuff. But we're doing really well. We have a nice life. Our people, our families, healthy and happy. Um, and we make enough to survive and live on. And
Mhm.
for us, that's good. And I like to give back by mostly by having the young people come in and tour the company. I get the most pleasure out of those people, the kids, when you can see the light bulbs go on in their minds. Sometimes it's just an awesome thing to see. Those are my values.
Thank you. Sorry, a train is going by. I was muting temporarily.
That's all right. I have a train going by here too. Uh,
Yes, it goes quite loud right underneath my
uh,
window. Well, those are amazing. Yeah, in the just the short dozen or so interviews that I've done, some of the almost everyone talks about having core values that they defined and share
sure.
with their employees and put on the wall. And I think that's such an important aspect of having a business that knows sort of what they're there for, right, and why they're doing what they're doing, and the those values that sort of guide everything they do, their decision making, and the way they show up.
Yeah.
So yeah, I applaud you for that.
Thank you.
Um, Over the years, as you grew, sounds like mostly through referrals and just good hard cold calling and just working from the ground up. How how diversified have you gotten today? Like how many different industries or clients, and do you have any guidelines about how big you let any particular one customer get or things like that?
Funny you should ask that. I always get asked this question, and we all do. You're aware we belong to the National Tooling and Machining Association. So I get to hang out with my peers all the time, and we all talk about concentration. We all do our best to not have that real heavy customer, but boy, is it hard to avoid. At least it has been for us. And it's changed. The customer or the industry has changed over the years, but there always seems to be that one or two that rise to the top that take the majority of our capacity.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we understand that it's a risk, particularly with what we went through with oil.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but we, at least in the back of our minds, we always have a backup of what industries we can go back and hit more if we
Right.
need to. But we we have aerospace related. Aerospace to me is actually two different industries. There's
Okay.
aero and there's space.
Yep.
And it's becoming a bigger divide all the time, right? I mean,
Yes, it
there's
is.
airplanes and then there's spacecraft or satellites.
Hmm.
Satellites becoming a new industry for us that we didn't think anything about, and then they just kind of fell in our lap because actually that one came from a trade show.
Oh,
So
really?
we do the design to part show whenever it's in town here, and there was a buyer from a company that makes stuff for satellites, and that was really all that kind of marketing. Never had a lot of great success with it, so I just kind of keep the line in the water, you know. I keep the bait out there just in case, and every once in a while we'll get somebody from a trade show or something. Um, So as far as industries go now, we're in aerospace. We're still oil and gas, medical. During one of the recovery processes where we were recovering from the downturn, we got into medical laboratory equipment. Grew really big with that customer. They dominated us for years.
Hmm.
And every time I would try to add equipment to be able to bring in another customer, they'd fill it up,
Hmm.
and I'd buy another machine and they'd fill it up. And it was really difficult to try to diversify even more because they kept
Yeah.
filling it up. And we have a customer who's kind of doing that to us right now. We're
Hmm.
accepting it because we understand the risk and we want to grow with them. But at
Hmm.
the same time, it's going to give us the cash flow and so forth to invest in new equipment to be able to bring other customers in. So
Yeah.
it's a constant battle back and forth. And
Oh,
no, I don't have any
absolutely.
hard, fast rules on concentration. I just know I have to keep it at a certain level. Kids are monitoring that a lot more than I did.
Right.
I was kind of like Dad. I'm just looking for the next bunch of business. They're
Sure.
actually saying, "Well, this is scary." I'm going, "Yeah, it is.
Hmm.
What do you want to do about it?"
Hmm. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's hard to say no to a good customer that wants to give you purchase orders.
It is. It is. And we
So,
did just do that the other day, as a matter of fact, with this customer.
oh
We
yeah.
were having a sit down here, and they'd been moving a lot of parts into us, which is great. It's what we wanted. It's what we planned for. Um, and it was getting a little dicey. Our programming became bottleneck,
Hmm.
and we had so many new parts backed up trying to get into programming that he asked how we were doing. Do we need to throttle back? And we said, yeah, just pause for a second while we get these next batch of parts and then start letting them out again. So,
Okay.
and I looked at him. I said, so how often do your suppliers tell you no? And he says, not very often. They keep taking it until they choke, and then they give us a lot of problems. He says, so we really appreciate you being honest
Hmm.
and letting us know when we need to kind of back off a little bit.
Yeah.
So we're
No,
not going to lose
that's
that. We're not going to lose that work. It's just it's going to be a little bit later.
right. Yeah. No, that's there's so much wisdom in that. Um, if you have that longer term outlook of that customer for years,
Mm-hmm.
you got to be able to say something like, no, let's pause for a little bit because I don't want to get into the place where I'm choked and now I'm causing you grief because then you're going to
Exactly.
find a new supplier altogether.
Again, yeah, exactly. And that's why we're getting the business now is because
Yeah.
somebody else did that. So
Yeah. Of course. Wow. Yep. Good advice. Let's talk a little bit about workforce. Workforce is this thing that every shop struggles with today. I
yep,
happen to know that you have some robots and you have
we
had
do.
for quite a while, I think now, right? So yeah, I'd love to hear you talk about how you recruit, how you retain, what technology you've adopted to help mitigate the fact that it's hard to find people.
I look back at our automation. We started doing that about 20 years ago. We bought our first linear pallet pull
Hmm.
with two horizontals and 32 pallets. But it wasn't because of people. We had some
Okay.
employees that were scared, thinking we were going to let them go because we were automating
Mm.
things.
Hmm.
And it took a lot of convincing that that's not the case. We're adding capacity without adding people. And I had to explain the whole process of the other process of that was being able to produce in smaller batch at a more
Yes.
economical price for our customers that wanted just in time manufacturing. Um, those worked very well for us. That early automation stuff and that mindset that it wasn't about getting rid of people or even making up for people we couldn't get. It was just because we needed to build in smaller batches and use use our brains as much
Mm-hmm.
instead of our brawn. And then even as we progressed into multi-axis machines and robots to load and unload, same thing. I explained to even the guys that have been here a long time, the button pusher's going away.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to learn these new systems, just like my dad turned handles.
Right.
I turned handles until I had to learn how to program. It's the same thing now. They have to learn how to take on this automation stuff because that's how we're going to have to do business to be able to compete globally a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes down to the people, I think because of that technology we have in the shop, it's actually made it a little easier for us to get some interested young people. They come in and they see the automation, they see a lot of the gee whiz stuff, and they like that. They like to see
Mm-hmm.
that, and they show interest in that. And that's so recently we've hired, I think, 3 new people,
Mm-hmm.
all of them under 25.
Okay.
Couple of them right out of high school.
Right.
We're very fortunate. We have a high school down the street that has a great shop or a manufacturing program.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And we hired a young man out of there. I think he just turned 20.
Mm-hmm.
So he just graduated a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
And his twin brother works at a grocery store, and he works here, and he's catching on really quick. We started out, just filling the coolant in the machines and dumping the hoppers and deburring
Right.
apart or washing parts and stuff. And he's out there this morning. He's running machines, big smile on his face. I got 3 of those guys out there right now doing that. I don't. I should say that it's not me. It's John
Right.
and the kids. They're hiring the right way. Not so much. I mean, we all talk. All this whole industry talks about skilled labor shortage.
Mm-hmm.
Get over it.
Mm-hmm.
They're just not there. They're
Right.
just all the skilled people have got jobs and they're making
Yeah.
really good money. And you can poach them, but it's just going to cost too much. So we really need to kind of get back to our roots and what we all
Mm-hmm.
do and what NTMA has been promoting for years, and that's apprenticeship or some kind of training to bring new people in and start them. And we may or may not learn how to crank a handle on a lathe or pull the handle on a bridge for it, but
Sure.
they're going to be able to make parts for us, and
Yeah.
probably better parts than we ever did on the lathe in the mills.
Sure. Of course.
So at this point, knock on wood, Paul, we're still looking for people. It'd be nice to have another programmer. Don't have that yet, but we'll have to grow them. We have to grow them ourselves.
And do you have any kind of formal training program within your company, or is?
My answer previously would have been no. Nothing written.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of taught hands-on, same way I was taught by my dad.
Yep.
Excuse me. And but we just implemented a new ERP system that has like all the training. We're able to capture all the training, and it kind of had a template of the. And I could say, I guess I can say this. It's Pro Shop, since everybody knows who Paul is. And what Pro Shop is. It's not necessarily promotion for Pro Shop, but it's about documenting the training module and outlining what they need to learn to get to the next level.
Mm-hmm.
So we're taking the templates that are in that and building them for us and implementing that. It's not fully engaged yet. It'll probably take us another couple of years to really get that where it's sharp and everybody will know what they need to do to get to the next level.
Right.
That's very important to us to get that done. So because we are going to have to train our own. So we really need to have some sort of an outline on how we're going to do that.
Yeah. Well, that warms my heart for multiple reasons.
I'm sure it does.
But that's so important. And then obviously you've talked about sort of having this really family type culture. What are some of the tactical, practical things you actually do to help foster that family culture?
I know everybody's name.
Yeah, the walkarounds every time. Yeah.
Excuse me. I may not know all their kids' names, but I usually know if they have kids or not. Usually know if they're married or not. I know some of them have to commute a long ways, and I let them know I appreciate that they have to drive on LA freeways and stuff to get here.
Mm-hmm.
I go, this must really be a good place to work. I don't know. They keep coming. and they stay here a long time. Um, Other things that we do, it's nothing formal, Paul, but we'll have barbecues once in a while. We always do something on safety meeting. We have safety meetings once a quarter. Um, we're going on 3.5 years without a lost time accident.
Wow.
We've had a
Yeah.
5-year record and a 10-year record before that.
That's
Um,
amazing.
so it's really hasn't been all that difficult. Particularly with the newer equipment stuff, it's not dangerous anymore. We talked about that earlier, right? We all still have our fingers. The equipment today is a lot safer than it used to be, and we don't have those big accidents anymore, thank God. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, and then it's just everyone here knows that if they have a problem at home, they can go in and talk to Christy. They can talk to me. My door's open. Um, I, I don't know, Paul. It's just how we do business. I don't even give it a lot of thought. It's just who we are.
Right. Well, I mean, from knowing you just as long as I have, I think it comes out in how you show up in the world, and it just probably
I guess.
attracts people that are like minded and value that.
And I think John and Christy and our son Nick are going to continue that. They all see the value in that. They all like being part of that family, and
Right.
they share that down as well.
Yeah. Well, excellent. So I'd love to dig into a little bit more of sort of the operational side of things. Obviously, production is right in the name of your company, so you focus more on production volumes of work. How do
Dad,
you? Yeah, go
dad,
ahead.
dad, dad gave us that name. So dad
Okay.
was a tool and die maker. So he was
Yes.
making ones and
Right.
twos of things, right? And when he started this business, he says, I don't want to make one of anything anymore. So he named it Mosey's Production Machinist just for that reason. He didn't want anybody to bring him tooling work or fixture work. We did some of that, and we still do occasionally, but it's rare. I usually have to
Hmm.
say no to the folks that just want one
Right.
or two pieces.
Do you think having that in your name just helps convey to potential customers that this is the place to come for production work?
You would think. It doesn't necessarily work. We typically have to explain it again. And then even with our own time, our customers have been with us a long time. Occasionally, we'll have to remind them,
Right.
production machinist.
Right.
So our good customers and stuff, we'll help them in their development of new product and stuff because we know we're going to move into the production with them. But just the guy off the street that needs a drive shaft for his
Sure. Of
32
course.
Cadillac or something, I'm just not the guy for
Yes. Of course. Of course. I do want to ask, since you just mentioned it, helping new customers with development efforts.
that.
Do you have dedicated equipment for doing that type of work, or do you mix it in with production on your same machines?
Great question. Very difficult answer. Over the years, we've tried several times to develop a separate area in the shop, dedicated equipment, dedicated person, dedicated programming module to be able to handle that. So we would build it for the customers and then they wouldn't use it. So pretty soon you were moving production back into those machines and we're right back where we were. We've done that at least twice over the years. Still struggle with that. So at this point in time, my answer to that question is we find a place to stuff it
Mm-hmm.
in with the regular stuff. But unfortunately, that usually takes one of our two programmers
Right.
that have the most experience to program and make that part. When he's out of the loop doing that, we're not getting programs for the new production work that we do. So it's a constant balance of trying to get that. It's a problem that John will have to figure out how to deal with going forward.
Right.
And it may mean some more investment in some standalone equipment, maybe even a separate building. I don't know. It may have to be that separated to keep it out of the production machine
Right.
because it definitely screws things up when we try to do it.
Oh yeah.
You know, when we interrupt the production to do that, it's tough.
Yeah. In our whether this will be any value or not, in our shop, we actually were very successful in doing exactly that. We had, but we I guess we're even probably more diversified in that regard. So probably about 3/4 of our business was production, um, and almost a quarter of it probably was prototyping. And we had, at the height, we had, I think, 5 full-time dedicated prototype machinists that were sort of master programmer set up, folks that they each had their own machine. Um, and so their programming stations were right there in front of their machine. They would just program and make parts, very much in a almost like a one piece flow. They'd start the roughing sequence, program it, get it roughing while they start programming more tools, and then just like drip feed one tool at a time. But yeah, we were, of course, there were on occasion we had to, ask them to run a 20-piece batch of something if we just really were backed up in production. But
Mhm.
I think the thing that made it successful was we had enough customers that did nothing but prototype work. It wasn't just a feeder for production, although we certainly very intentionally did that as well. But I think we just had enough of a wide enough diverse base of customers that really just had prototype needs that we were able to keep them busy pretty much all the time, and growing that department over the years as well. So, um, but it sure
So I'm
was.
going to I'm
It
going to
sure
ask you a question.
yes,
How did your customers? Let me rephrase that. Were you allowed to actually charge what it cost you to do those?
we were. That was a
Awesome.
very profitable part of our business.
Okay. Good for
You
you.
know,
Our customers that are typically production are used to paying production pricing.
right
So when we try to
at a
price a one or
prototype
two
quantity,
piece at a prototype quantity, yeah, exactly, and it's
right?
you can't do that. It doesn't you can't make money doing that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was just about setting the expectations at the beginning of the relationship.
Yep.
Like, these are the most highly paid people we have. Some of them make more than I do as the owner.
Right.
And, you know, if you want really complicated parts turned around in days, we can do that for you, but it's going to cost a bunch of money.
This much.
But
Yeah.
it's
Exactly.
more important to you to get those in a few days or a week than it is to wait for several weeks, from some other shop that probably can't do it as well. So, but yeah, but again, by no means easy, but when we went out selling, in fact, I don't know if you ever did this, but I actually had a pretty nice aluminum briefcase that looked kind of high tech and
Mhm.
manufactury. And I had foam cut out inside of it with parts nestled into the foam of all different kinds. From I couldn't carry anything huge, but from little turned parts to complex 5-axis pieces to front display panels for cockpits and all the things that we kind of specialized in. And people loved. I'd whip that out on the conference room table, and I'd let them play with parts as we talked, and they'd be like, "Oh yeah, we have a part that's kind of like this,"
That's right.
and they're like, "Great, let's quote on it for you then."
Absolutely. I actually prefer to get them here. If
Oh
I
yeah,
can get them to come and visit us and get a tour of the shop, that almost always seals the deal. They can
yeah,
see what we can do, and they see the parts, they see how we do, and they see everybody walking around with a smile on their face.
hmm
And they say,
yes,
I want to put my parts here."
yeah. You have a particularly appealing shop, so I can see why that'll help close the deal every time.
It does. Thank you. I'll take the
Um,
compliment.
Tell me what are some of the things you track on the production side of the business, in terms of NCRs or spindle uptime, or just the things that help you're doing a good job.
But good. Again, the new ERP system is really helping us organize that better than we had before. We had an older ERP system that was really awkward. It was a Unix-based system, not
Oh,
very
that's old.
flexible. It was 32 years. I implemented it 32 years ago, and I didn't even know how to type, let alone work a computer.
Wow.
So that was awful. The youngins have asked for new ERP, and I said, "You're going to have to do it. I'm not going to do it." So they
Right.
implemented the new ERP. They chose it. They implemented it, and it has a much better way of tracking that kind of information. John was doing a lot of extracting information out of the database, trying to build his own processes and stuff for measuring efficiency and capacity and those kind of things, and was doing a pretty good job out of it. It was all pretty much manual
hmm
and very difficult to share. And we were never really sure the information was right.
hmm
It's much better now, and those are the kind of things that he's measuring now. And as our ERP system, we've been almost a year, I think,
Hmm.
since we started the implementation, and we're just now getting enough background information there to really start giving us something we can look at and see what trends and stuff are there. Before we were kind of have to look at what we thought we were doing and what we think we're doing now, and it really
Right.
wasn't accurate. So actually, the last year's been a little bit blind,
Right.
not exactly sure where we are
Right.
in a lot of
As you
cases,
make
but
that transition, sure.
it's starting to come together now. So I'm
Nice.
not very specific on that, Paul, because a question like that, I would probably go ask John.
Yeah.
What are you tracking right
Well, maybe
now?
John
I've
should.
actually at this point in my cycle, I've started letting go of some of that stuff and looking just at the bigger picture,
Hmm.
and trying to work more more on the business than in the business,
Hmm.
because they're all doing such a great job that allows me to start looking outside these four walls at maybe other opportunities.
So, what are those things you're working on today?
Yeah. um, Not a lot I can talk about, but there's as our generation's getting a little older, and a lot of them don't have a backup plan. I've talked to some business owners that say, I say, what's your exit strategy? And they say, when I die, I'm dead. And I said, well, what about your business? And he goes, I won't care.
Wow.
And I got, I know that's the exact response I had. Wow. Okay. I still kind of care, particularly since the name's on the front of the building, and
Hmm.
there's still going to be Moseys around. So yeah, I kind of care.
Hmm.
Um, so I've tried to set it up to where they can take it from here, and then I can start looking for other opportunities. But those are the kind of opportunities I'm looking for. If those
Okay.
people are out there and they're looking for, if they don't have a way out and just don't know what they're going to do with this equipment, and they don't want to lose their, they love their people and they don't want to see them out of work, but they don't know how to handle it. They don't know what to do. Maybe I can help. I don't know. So those are the kind of opportunities I'm looking for. I did one.
Excellent.
We can talk about failures too, right?
Sure. Absolutely.
Sure. Okay.
Yes,
Because
please.
I think learning from failures is a really good way to learn. It can be costly, but it's not. So in 2005, we bought a machine shop in Northern California. We're in Southern California.
Mm.
I was looking for something to do. Actually, I was looking for a sheet metal business at the time. I ran across another machine shop, was actually the manufacturer of a product, and they were their own machine shop that was getting spun off and
Hmm.
disassembled. So I went in and bought the equipment, took over the operation, built parts for that same customer. So my thought process was to grow a footprint in Northern California, be able to supply Bay Area with parts, and grow beyond this one customer that this facility had.
Hmm.
Fortunately, they kept us so busy for the first couple of years that I couldn't get anybody else in there.
Hmm.
And the then semiconductor took a big dive, and it collapsed in 2008 along with
Mm.
everything else. And I lost that business. So looking
Wow.
back at that, I would have done that a lot differently than I did. Um, and
What would you
so
have done
I
differently?
learned from that. Um, I probably would have started a lot earlier at maybe changing management around a little bit from what I had in there,
Okay.
and focusing more on business development and kind of forcing the issue.
Hmm.
Um,
Right.
I kind of let them run it, but they were they had all been running these parts for years. They knew the process. They knew the customers intimately,
Right.
because they were employees of
Right.
before.
Yeah.
So it was very difficult to try and bring a new customer in. I tried one. I had a good opportunity, and they dropped the ball on the quote. Job went somewhere else, and that
Mm-hmm.
was just before everything started taking a nosedive. And there
Right.
just wasn't enough time to recover. We poured money into it for about 8 months, and it,
And then you eventually just sell off the machines and shut the doors, or?
yeah, I had to do an auction. Yeah, I brought some of the equipment down here. We had just installed a brand new FMS, and one horizontal and 24 pallets.
Hmm.
6 months earlier, I had to uproot that and bring that down here, and brought down a few of the other machines. Kept some of the work for a while, but then they found other, as business went down in the Bay Area, they were able to find suppliers right there locally that could do the work,
Right. Yeah.
and not
Yeah.
have
That's
to
a
worry
hard
about
lesson.
shipping. It was a really difficult. I'm still paying for it today. It was a
Wow.
long time ago. It was a pretty big bite. but I'm a little bit more cautious about the deals I look at today.
Mm-hmm.
Haven't pulled the trigger on any, but I got a few in the pipeline, so we'll see where it
Well,
goes.
okay. Well, good luck with those.
Thank you.
Um, what what do you think were some of your most strategic, best moves you ever made?
Putting the first FMS in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, that was huge, and it took us a few years to figure out how to use it properly.
Mm-hmm.
But it's that I don't think we would be here today if we hadn't done that. I
Okay.
think because that went in 2003. Is that right? 2003 it went in. But we had started the process in 2002. Aerospace had taken a dive in 2001,
Mm-hmm.
but we weren't in aerospace. We were
Okay.
in medical laboratory equipment.
Right.
So we were busy um, until a little bit later, and then just the whole economy started slowing down in the early 2000s. So we almost didn't get to put that in because we couldn't get financing for it.
Mm.
We had been promised financing, and then things weren't looking great, and they pulled their plug. I found another guy that was able to help us. I still work with that guy today. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
he could see what a good opportunity that was. And I don't think we would be here today if we hadn't done that. I think focusing on growing the right people that believed in Moseys and where we're going and what we want to do has been instrumental. Uh, maybe at the top, Paul. I don't know.
Yeah.
Probably at
So,
the top.
do you hire for that cultural fit
Yeah,
more than technical skills?
absolutely. Yeah. And we've been working on that. We've been through the NTMA, they always go to conferences and they have speakers. And they had a gentleman a year ago, and I unfortunately I can't remember his name, but
Chris
he talked.
Sarnik.
That's the guy. He talked a lot about changing the way we look for people and getting rid of the old wanted ads. I must have this
Mm-hmm.
skill, this skill, this skill, this skill, and you get that guy that has all those skills, but and you can't work with the guy. So
Right.
we found out that we had a lot better luck if we could talk to the person, see where their interests were, what their hobbies were. Um, that told us more about the person than anything. We can teach the skills. We can
Mm-hmm.
figure that out.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely more for culture than anything. And
Yeah.
we definitely go over our values with them when they come in and make sure they're on board with that. And
Well, that
Paul,
was
even if I try to slip up a little bit and maybe twist the truth a little bit, they call me. They call me on it and go, Bob, honesty. Yeah, okay,
it's your core value.
it
Number
is
one. Yeah.
number one.
Very good.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No, 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 no. I'll make sure to include the link to because I was there for that talk. It was an amazing talk.
It
Um,
was
and I think he's going to talk at the next one coming up here soon. But I'll
probably.
make
I'll
sure
be
there's a
there.
link. I'll make sure there's a link to that in the show notes.
Yeah.
Um, can you share one of your top one or two most memorable experiences owning your shop? Maybe the good
Wow.
ones. I know
um,
the bad ones come to mind
they
faster.
always come up to mind quickly. Yeah, and I'm trying to think of the good ones. I think that they're not. I don't think there's any major ones. I think they're more the small ones.
Mm-hmm.
It's the walking in a room and have somebody be excited about what they're working on. And say, hey, Bob, come here, look what I'm doing. And they show me what they're doing, and they're excited, and it just thrills me. I almost cry when they do that
Mm-hmm.
because it's so exciting to see someone else excited about this business and what they're doing and be happy with what they're working on. And I think that thrills me the most. Um, Financially, I'd say it was probably investing in the property. Um,
You bought your building.
we bought actually. See, I can't remember 97. I think we bought our first building.
Okay.
My wife and I bought that
Mm-hmm.
outside the business. Um, None of my other family were interested in getting involved in the building. I saw somehow or another had the vision
Mm-hmm.
to go ahead and hawk everything we had to be able to to put a down payment down on our first building, which was 11,000 square feet, to move us out of all those multi-tenant buildings
Right.
that we were
Sure.
in. We thought we'd never outgrow that. Well, 8 years later, we were shoulder to shoulder in that 11,000 square foot building, and then moved to this one, which is 32,000. And
Wow.
we have plenty of room to grow in here. And with the way equipment is today, I don't need rows of 3-axis mills or 2-axis lathes anymore, right?
Right.
Because every machine we sit down is already that. It's
Sure.
already 2 lathes and a 5-axis mill. I don't need
Right.
all those other equipment. So
Yeah.
in this same footprint, we can double our revenue in here without
Right.
any problem at all.
Yeah.
It'll be a while before we have to move again, but from a personal investment point of view, I think the building probably has been my
Yeah.
biggest accomplishment investment wise.
That's super smart. We were never able to buy our building at our shop, and I wish we
Yeah.
had tried to figure out
Wish
a
we
way.
had, yeah, especially now, right? With commercial property being up so much.
Oh my goodness. Yes.
Uh,
So I think you've already shared just an incredible amount of things that a newer shop owner or someone thinking about starting a shop would take away. But if you could add some of the best advice that you would give to someone early in their journey, what would that
you
be?
sure you want to do this?
That's good. That's a good question.
I mean, you really got to think about it, and be willing to put the blood, sweat, and tears in. You got to be willing to take the sacrifice. You got to put your name on the line, literally on the
Mm-hmm.
signature line for loans. You do personal guarantees that if things go south, you could lose everything.
Mm-hmm.
So it's that making sure that you understand the risk that's there
Mm-hmm.
and be willing to take that on. Um, it's one thing to know about it. Um, it's another thing to say, yeah, I'm okay with that. And if you happen to be married, make sure they're okay with that. Your spouse is
Mm-hmm.
okay with that, because it can be really dicey at times. Um, and I'm trying to think what else I might say. Business development. I think when I see a lot of upstarts, my dad, for example, he knew like one person that might have work for him, and yet he still started it. You might want to have a little bit bigger base than that in your pocket before
Bigger
before
than
you
one.
do bigger than one. Just so you have some idea how you're going to be able to go get that new business. I think joining a trade association earlier on is also
Mm-hmm.
really important. Um, when we joined the NTMA originally, it wasn't me; it was my dad and my sister, because of the insurance program. That was in '92, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
We ended up not using their insurance. Dad was not a joiner, so he never went to meetings or anything. My little brother and I got invited to go to a B-17 tour where they built the B-17s here in Long
Very
Beach
fun.
back in the day. It was awesome. Met a couple of gentlemen there, John Belzer from TCI Precision Metals, and his dad were there, and he was the chapter president of NTMA. Invited me to come to the next meeting, which was a roundtable, and we all shared ideas on how we do things, fix things, make things better. I was so enthralled with that, I started going regularly. Ended up getting invited to go on the board for the chapter. Ended up going to chapter or to national meetings because of that. Local chapter on steroids, even more people, more things to learn, and people that were willing to share these things. To the day, I don't believe it. That's basically my MBA. I didn't really go to
Mm-hmm.
college, so I come out of high school, Air Force, worked,
Right.
and so for someone that's starting early, I would encourage them to go to the trade association, no matter what line of business you're in. There are trade associations for that, and just start rubbing elbows with other people in that business, in those businesses, and learning from that, because the amount of information you get out of it's just unbelievable. So
Yeah.
that's my little plug for NTMA as well.
Yeah, and I would wholeheartedly agree. Those meetings are pretty fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I heard someone say once that your net worth is your network, right? Your network of people you know that helps contribute so much to
Right.
your success. So
And it's not what you know; it's who you know.
exactly.
That's
Yep.
same thing. Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely. I like your note. That's a good one. The network. I'll remember that one, Paul. Thank you.
Of course. Um, what are some of the biggest challenges you're facing today?
Uh, well, diversification. We talked about that already. About
Yes.
having customer. I still want to do that. We still want to do that. We're going to have to get this new business under our belt, and then start looking at how we're going to grow to be able to bring in those other customers to help diversify more. Um, and I've also learned over the years that you can't wait until you're out of work to get more. So you kind of have to be selling all
Such
the
an important
time.
lesson. Yes.
And if you're busy, that's really great because you can have a good abundance mentality then and be able to say no to those opportunities that really don't fit you and only
Right.
say yes to the ones that do fit you the best.
Hmm.
So that's, again, that's kind of advice, but um,
But
that's kind of where I'm at.
that's great advice. Have you? If how do you? What is your sweet spot? Like what when you see a drawing or a model, and you know this is good for us versus what's not good. Did you? I imagine there's some stories behind some of the ones you tried to take on that were not good, and you probably have a list of don't do these kind of
Knock
parts,
on
don't do
wood.
those kind
Yeah,
of
knock on
parts.
wood, Paul. We haven't had too many failures. We've had some that we couldn't do for the price that we quoted, and we're
Hmm.
able to go back and renegotiate. But I think I can only think of one, maybe two over the 47 years that we actually had to give the job back because we just couldn't do it.
Oh wow,
And
amazing.
typically those come because of tolerances that are very difficult to measure,
Hmm.
not make, measure. And
Hmm.
then, as you know, you usually end up in some sort of a discussion with your customer about how you're going to measure it versus how they're going to measure it.
Exactly.
And because
Come to an
they could be
agreed
using
upon standard.
calipers. Yeah, yeah, you got to have that. And even then, there's so many variables and how the geometries of the parts were. These were cool little titanium parts, and we really wanted to make them and help the customer because they were having trouble getting them made. And um, we actually made some of them, but we weren't comfortable with the results we were getting, and rather than again um, have a failure with the customer, we declined any new purchase orders with them,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
So that's really only happened once, twice maybe over the years.
Well,
And
that's remarkable
the
and a
other parts we had
testament.
difficulty. Yeah, well, we try to be careful about how we take them. And sometimes we have to look at it twice. Our first response might be no.
Hmm.
John may say no, and I'll go and sit down and we'll talk about it some more. And pretty soon, him and the programmers are looking at it and they're going, "Okay, we can do it this way." And then it's a yes. Or
Right.
probably more often, I'm saying yes, we can do it, and they look at it and go, "Bob, we can't do this."
The
Dang.
eternal optimist. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I am a little bit. Yeah.
Well, that's a good quality. I think that's an important quality to have, especially in this business.
So again, Paul,
Be
I
hard
get
to be a
everybody to.
pessimist. And
Yeah, it is, and I try to get everybody that's going to be involved in it. I get their buy-in early.
hmm.
Nothing worse than accepting a job and then surprising your programmers and guys out in the shop with a part that they can't make and have to go back.
Yes,
So I get everybody involved before we even quote it.
I think that's great advice for any kind of big decision in a company. Get the buy-in
It
from
is.
everyone that's going to be involved. Yeah. Yes.
My dad would just come back from somewhere and say, "Clear a spot. We have a new machine coming tomorrow."
Really?
What? That's how I got the first CNC. I didn't know anything about it.
Right.
He just come in. He said, "Clear that spot because the new CNC is going to be here tomorrow." We don't know anything about CNC. We don't know how. He says, "They'll teach us." Okay, we figured it out.
Yes, obviously. That's really cool.
But it
That's
would have been
funny.
nice. It would have been nice to know about it beforehand.
Yeah. All right. Well, Bob, I think we need to start getting close to wrapping up here. Any kind of just last words you'd want to share with the metalworking community about your your wisdom over the years?
Well, Paul, I think we've touched on a lot of it already. I think it's it's about knowing your values. It's about who you know, that you're not out here all by yourself.
Hmm.
That there are people around you that are more than willing to help and lend a hand. Um, don't be afraid of that. Um, don't be shy. Um, I guess it's okay to be shy. I can't tell you not to be shy, but put yourself out there a little bit.
Hmm.
I know it helped me tremendously getting involved, enforcing myself past that comfort level to get involved in being able to network with other people. Um, prior to the NTMA, I was pretty quiet guy.
Mm-hmm.
And now you can see I can talk for hours. So it's not the same. I've learned a lot about getting out there and talking to people, and the value in that of sharing information has just been awesome. I mean, I don't know another word for it. So.
I think those are great words to end on. So, how would people, if people wanted to learn more about Moseys, how would they find you online?
Well, thank you. For us, it's Moseys.com, Moseys.com. Just, I don't know if you can
Yes,
see that
just
or
like the
not.
shirt.
Um, it's plural possessive. My sister was an English major, so
Okay.
she actually the official name is Moseys with the apostrophe after the S. We kind of dropped that because there was always so much confusion about where to put the apostrophe that we just dropped the apostrophe. But, it that Moseys.com is where you can learn about us, or of
Okay.
course you can give me a call anytime you want. My cell number, my contact information is on the website. Any of
Okay.
us here are more than happy to talk to anybody about anything.
I know that's true. All right, Bob. Well, thank you so much. This has been a delightful hour to spend with you, and I really appreciate you sharing with my audience. And I know they learned a lot from you. So thank you.
Paul, thank you very much for inviting me, and I appreciate what you do for the industry, and keep up the good work, man.
All right. Take care, Bob. See you soon.
All right, thanks. Bye.